Up, let's start. I'm in Visio with Johnny Dee, drummer of Doro, Britny Fox, who played with many more bands. Johnny, thanks for accepting this interview.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
To start with, for those who didn't know you, can you introduce yourself in a few words?
Yeah, I'm Johnny D. My last name is D Teodoro, and it always got misspelled and too long for people to handle, so I shortened it to D many years ago. But yeah, been playing drums practically my whole life and playing in bands for over 40 years. And I'm originally from Philadelphia in the USA. I live in Germany now. And as you mentioned, I play with Doro for 30, I think this is my 33rd year or something crazy like that. And yeah, I was in bands also like Wasted and Britny Fox, and also playing with Tyketto now currently. So that's me. That's more than a few words, but that's it.
Okay, we talk about all this. Mm. Um, the first time I've listened Doro was in 1991 with the album Triumph and Agony by Warlock. Even so, you don't play on it. What this album evokes to you?
Hmm. Triumph and Agony. That was what, 1988 or 87 it came out? Yeah.
Yes.
I think it's, well, because it was Warlock at the time, I think it represents maybe the height of their career. They were a band that achieved quite a bit pretty quickly, you know. They came out of Germany almost from nowhere, and then they started to get a lot of attention with this beautiful blonde girl singing, some, super young German girl, dressed in leather and just screaming like a banshee with this unbelievable voice and power and energy. And I think it knocked everybody out. It was really amazing stuff. And Triumph and Agony was like the peak of their songwriting and uh, their power. They made it to America, became sort of well known there, and they got a bunch of tours. And for me, um, that was when I really first heard of them. I didn't have the earlier albums. So that was my introduction to the band and seeing them on MTV in America. And yeah, always thought Doro was great. And it's pretty cool that I ended up playing with her all these years later.
Hmm? Okay. Um, so I've seen you was on tour with Tyketto last year. Can you tell? Can you tell about? Can you tell us about? And are you an official member?
Yes, I took over for the original drummer, Michael Arbini, who basically retired from touring. And he, I think Danny Vaughan being the sort of leader of the band after, without Michael there, wasn't sure if he wanted to continue, and I think Michael gave him his blessing to continue without him. And apparently, he wanted to call me before anybody just to see if I was available or willing to do it. So I said, absolutely. Would be great to play with you again, and also to play in this band with, the lineup's pretty secure. Uh, and we made the record as a band, the new record, Closer to the Sun. We came together, the five of us, and, we toured almost 2 years before we did this album, just to make sure everybody could get along and work with each other and enjoy each other's company and, make music together. So it all went really well. And Danny thought, yeah, this is going great. Let's make a record. And we did. And that came out really great too. So we're all proud of that. And we're all proud to be part of the band as well.
Hmm? Ok. Latest Doro album, Conquerors Forever, Strong and Proud, dates back to 2023. What are the feedback on it? And it seems Nick Douglas, who is the bass player since 1991, don't play on this record and don't play live. Can you explain the reason? Is he still a member of the band?
Yes, currently Nick Douglas is back in the band and performing live. Um, I would say he took a break during the COVID period. He didn't feel comfortable to travel around, and it was just too much going on at that time, vaccinations and showing passes and doing, all this kind of stipulations for people that wanted to work at that time. And he thought, was a little bit burned out from everything, and he just wanted to stay home and wait till this whole thing was passing by. So Doro found a bass player from her area, from Oberhausen, named Stefan Herkenhoff, who played with Beyond the Black, and we had played a couple gigs together. Doro went down and had a chat with him and said, we need somebody to partner up with. And she also wrote a couple songs with him, and which, made it onto the record. And so it was a working partnership, and Stefan was kind enough to come in and take over and do some shows with us. He ended up staying in the band for 2 years, I think. And then, he decided to pursue his other job, which is he's a paramedic, an EMT. He does a lot of work in that field, and he took a job up in the North Sea. Uh, yeah, he said, I'll be around if you guys need me, but I'm going to go do this job and see how that works out. And so, yeah, Doro called Nick up and said, hey, maybe you want to come back now. Everything's sort of back on track, and it would be great to have you back on stage with us. And Nick, I think, was ready for that, to accept that again. And he came back last summer and started doing a bunch of festivals and stuff with him. So we were very happy to have him back.
Hmm? Okay. I watched some drum solo you made, and you often include some popular rhythm of hard rock song, Run to the Hills, I Love It Loud, maybe Immigrant Song, if I'm not wrong. Is it a joke or is it important for you?
Oh, it's very important. I mean, these are, I could probably do many more, but those are the ones that, kind of worked within this framework, just to get the crowd going along. Some people recognize it, some people just follow the beat and move to that. But yeah, Doro really loved when I think many years ago when I first started doing a solo, I just threw some things in there to try out. And Dora was like, "Oh, I love that kiss part. You got to keep that." And I think I've been playing that for 20 years now. It's really been a staple of my solo, but it's cool. I also, yeah, Clive Burr, Run to the Hills. There's a little bit Nico in there. There's obviously some Bonham and a little bit of Neil Peart in places. All these guys that really influenced me. I probably just have it deep inside here somewhere and it just comes out naturally. But I love to, play a rhythm that means a lot to me like that, and I enjoy it when people enjoy it as well. That's the main thing for me is not so much to show, some amazing skills or whatever. Really, for me, a drum solo is a chance to be alone with the crowd and also to give the singer a little break and yeah, and to keep the crowd entertained for 5 minutes or so while everybody else leaves the stage. I don't want people to go have a piss or have a beer and then it's just the drums. I want them to clap along or sing along, and that to me is what it's all about.
Hmm? Okay. So I watched some others interview you made, and I noticed a strange thing. It seems most of the questions are regarding Britny Fox, as you passed many more time with Doro. How can you explain it?
Hmm. Uh, well, I guess because Britny Fox was um, sort of at the height of the 80s bands, and the sound, and I think we had a quite a popular record. The first one sold, almost platinum in America, which is it sold over 800,000 copies. So that's a lot of people that know me for that. Um, with Doro, I think, for years she changed band members many times, and people, it's called Doro now, so it's all about her, and that's fine. I love to be in the supporting role in the back and all, but I think more people may know me from Britny Fox than they do for Doro, because they just don't. Either it's from America where people are not as familiar with Doro's solo career and they're more familiar with Britny Fox, or you have a lot of, these guys doing interviews are fans of that time. If they're from America, they're focusing more on that time. But guys like you who do the research or have been doing it for a long time and know a little bit about everything, know my whole history and up until the present time, then you get, better questions for me, because I get to talk about a little bit of everything instead of just the Britny Fox days. That story's been told many times. There's not much left that's unknown. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Okay. So I suggest we talk about your career. To start with, can you describe your first step in music? What were your influences and how did you headed for drums?
I pretty much, I always had a sort of a passion or a feeling about drums. I don't even know where it came from. I come from a suburb of Philadelphia, from an Italian family background. My father played soccer professionally and he was born in Italy. So it was like a total one thing, not a musician family or anything like that, but just at the time that I was growing up, um, I had an older sister. She's 6 years older than me, Patty, and she had some great taste in music and always had like really, really cool records and stuff, and always whatever it was on the radio. But I learned a lot of about music from her and stole a lot of her record collection to look at the albums and study lyrics and, band names and members and everything like that. So, and then this passion for drumming just came back into my head, and I thought, man, I really, I love the drums. I'd love to get a drum kit. I would love to play drums, and then started to teach myself how to play in my parents' basement in the cellar. And yeah, had a couple friends who were into rock and roll as well, and we tried to get together and jam and learn how to play. And these are old times before anybody had any kind of real, music education or YouTube to look at, oh, how do I play this song? You just kind of listen and you figure it out and you learn to play, and eventually you start to get a little better. You start to play with other people, you interact, you learn, more and more, and then next thing you know, you're in a band and you want to play a gig, and that's how I think most musicians progress from nothing to performing. And I think once you hit the stage, you're like sort of addicted for life from that, it's something that you really become addicted to. It's an amazing feeling, and it's kind of why we continue to do it the rest of our lives. We want to perform, we want to make music, we want to, yeah, just feel that energy. And that's how I started.
Hmm? Okay. It seems your first band are Fragile with John Corabi, LeCompte, and Blind Driver. I found some videos of Fragile, but without you. Can you put your participations of this band in a chronological order? And can we listen some stuff in somewhere?
Mm. Yeah, so started with Blind Driver was a cover band that I had with some friends, and one of them being Bill Dagley, who became Billy Childs in Britny Fox. So we grew up together, started playing together, yeah, I developed a musical friendship with the guy. So we started a band together, and Bill also played in Fragile at another time. So Fragile was a Philly band that John Corabi started or was involved in, and they were kind of existing around the same time. So at different times, many musicians were in and out of that band with John. So being Billy and I both played with John at different times. Um, and yeah, that was a cool band. We were a cover band, but we didn't get a lot of work because we were playing only our favorite songs by like, you know, UFO and Iron Maiden, Quiet Riot. We were doing all this heavy stuff, Def Leppard and all, and nobody was really, um, it was kind of top 40 at that time. Hard rock was really in the charts. So it was popular, but there were certain bands that, people still didn't really react to, they wanted to hear like the real hits and stuff. So, but we had fun. And then from there I went to play with well, actually was in a band called World War III. Um Actually Fragile was first. I went and played with John, and that was the first time I ever played like original music. We did some cover songs, but we also played songs that John and the guys in the band wrote. So that was really cool for me because I was learning a whole new thing. It wasn't just like copying something from a record. I had to come up with my own parts, and that was a huge step from, cover band to performing original music. You're kind of like doing it for real now. I noticed that the time is winding down. Do you want to take a break here or keep going? I think we have 40 seconds left. Do you do you want to take a break here? Because the timer is going down.
Uh, I have I have again time.
Okay, I see 20 seconds here.
Oh,
Yeah. Okay, 20 minutes left for you.
I think yes, right.
Okay, let's see what happens here. Okay. Yeah,
So,
I can continue. Sorry about that. So I joined Fragile with John Corabi, some other musicians from Philadelphia, and that was really cool because we first time that I ever went into the recording studio was with John, and we recorded three of his songs and one cover song, which was the Yardbirds, but kind of a Aerosmith version of Train Kept a Rollin'. And yeah, we put this demo together. We started to put it out there and play some shows around the area and stuff, and that was really fun. That was a cool band. Um, and then yeah, John started to get offers from other bands and stuff. So the band was kind of not really all together, you know. So John went and did some other things, and I went and joined a band called World War III, which was from Philly, not the one that was from Los Angeles. And yeah, I did a record with them, um, which got mentioned in Kerrang magazine and stuff like that. So all of a sudden, I had like my name and photo in some European metal magazines and stuff. So I was starting to feel like, wow, this is possible that I could get somewhere. And then, yeah, after that, that was kind of the formative years in the Philly area. And that's how it went chronologically. And then after World War III, I went to England to join Wasted.
mhm. Okay. Um, so the first record I found is the World War III, which is not the same band of Mandy Lion. You replaced Dean Davidson, who played with you later. What memories do you keep of this first record?
World War III was a great, great band. The very early, if America had a new wave of heavy metal, like these guys should have been involved in that. They were two older brothers, Dan and Gary Hammer, and they were super talented and very good players, and they wrote amazing metal songs, heavy, heavy rock metal in the style of like Priest or Accept, old school metal with great riffs and stuff like that. And Dean was a drummer when I met those guys. I would go see them, and before we even had places for bands like this to play, these guys were doing concerts in like an old barn, or some kind of renting a big hall and performing there. They were doing their own shows and stuff like that, and they would just, on a weekend, many metal fans would go just to see them. You could pay like $5 and get a bunch of beer and just watch a band perform like a real concert. You didn't have to go very far. These guys were right in our area. So they did a 45 called Come and Get It, I think, and Intensive Care were the songs on this record. And, that was like a big deal. Wow, these guys made their own record, and they put it out. And then they had some interest to do some more. They got actually signed with a French label called Axe Killer, and they put out that first album, which is, uh, yeah, it's got about 6 or 8 songs, and some of them Dean played drums on, and the rest of them I played drums on, and that got a lot of attention. And as I said, Kerrang, Metal Forces, all these kinds of fanzines and European metal magazines. And that was really my introduction to the European scene and how many fans were really like starving for metal and hard rock. So it was pretty cool that we had that connection. But unfortunately, nothing came of it. We never came to France to play a gig. the record never really did anything. It just kind of was like, hey, we have an album out, but that was it. We didn't really do much with that. And then after some time, uh, I felt like, nothing was happening, so I was looking around for something else to do, and that was kind of my end of being in that band. It's a shame, really, because I think if it was a few years later, those guys really could have toured Europe and done really good, man. They were just a great band. But yeah, sadly, it didn't work out that way.
Hmm? Okay. So then we find you in a Wasted for the album Save Your Prayers. It seems you had moved to England to play with them. Was it the first time you met Danny Vogne from Tyketto? Yes?
Yes, it
Okay.
was. Yeah. Yeah, that was a crazy time and a crazy story that, three Americans. It was myself, Danny Vaughan, and my buddy Jimmy DeLello. We all ended up in England playing with these guys from UFO. I mean, we couldn't believe it. And Jimmy and I were good friends, but we didn't know Danny at all. So the first time I met Danny was over there getting ready to play with this band. So that was quite exciting, a little bit scary, nervous to play with some of my heroes in UFO, Paul Chapman and Pete Way, but they were very welcoming and they respected us as players and, all of a sudden there we were in London playing a show, at the Marquee Club for EMI Records. Steve Harris was helping the band, uh, to get signed, and him and Bruce Dickinson got up and jammed with us on a couple UFO songs at the Marquee. And the next day we were in Kerrang magazine, and I was just like, what is going on here? This is unbelievable. It was crazy, but that was really the beginning of me, I guess, being a professional, to get paid to play music and to be in a band that's uh, semi well known and being talked about in magazines and stuff. And then I made that record, which was my first major label release. That was super exciting. And we had a great time making that record down in Ibiza in Spain and at Judas Priest's old studio there. And yeah, it was just an amazing time and a great time going on the road, touring with Iron Maiden and Status Quo and doing a lot of cool gigs and learning a lot from the old veterans.
Hmm? Okay. And Paul Chapman and Pete Way were in the band. Both are unfortunately deceased in 2020. Did you keep the contact with them during the years or not?
I did, not so much. I saw Pete a few times um, when UFO reunited for the Walk on Water album. He came through my area. I went to see him, went to the show. It was really nice, sort of reuniting, and because we, played together for 2 years or so, and I loved that guy, man. He was just super cool, and I mean, the ultimate rock star, and just was great to play with him. But we tried to keep in touch, but it didn't really, was very rare that I would see him. But when I started coming to Germany to play with Doro, I seemed to see Pete every once in a while because he was working up in Hanover at a studio, so he was always kind of in and out. And I saw him at a gig one time, and so. But then, sadly, when he started to really go downhill, I hadn't talked to him during that whole period. Paul was another story. I talked to him quite a bit. I actually went down to Florida. We recorded some tracks for something, a project that he was doing just called the Paul Chapman Project. And we wanted to, get together and do maybe some shows in America or whatever would have been possible. I know he talked to Danny a little bit about, getting sort of the Wasted lineup back together, but I think Pete was a little bit too far gone at that time. So, yeah, nothing happened, but I did talk to those guys once in a while.
Okay. Then you joined Britny Fox in 1987. At this time, you changed your name. John Doro Jr. turns to Johnny Dee. Was it a will of the record company?
No, it was just I wanted to change it for the Wasted album, but the
Oh, he said,
manager,
okay.
yeah, I wanted to do it, but the manager was like, just use your real name, it's fine. And I was like, yeah, but it got misspelled on the World War III album, and I thought, people just screw up my name all the time. There's no sense in me trying to, fight it. I'm just going to make it short and easy for people to spell and to say, and that way it's much easier. And then, so I used my real name on the Wasted record, but when I joined Britny Fox, I said I'm going to be Johnny Dee now, because it was easier that way.
Okay. So you recorded three albums from 1988 to 1991. The first is your bestseller, but personally, I prefer Boys in It and Bite Down Out. They are much in hard rock style, as the first is maybe much glam for me. So can you talk about the evolution of the band?
Yep. Well, Britny Fox started sort of in the aftermath of Cinderella getting signed in Philadelphia. Cinderella got a record deal, and but one of the stipulations of their deal was that their A&R guy wanted them to get rid of two members of the band for whatever reason. I was not privy to that information, but I just assumed that they couldn't say no to the record company because that's what they wanted to get to that level all this time. So you kind of have to do whatever is necessary. So it's a blessing and a curse, as they say. So Michael Kelly Smith and Tony Destra got fired from Cinderella. They hooked up with Dean Davidson, who had this idea for a band called Britny Fox. And he quit the drums and started playing guitar and singing, and that's what he wanted to do. And he, talked to Mike and Tony, and he said, I got all these songs, and I'm playing guitar, and, you guys need a band. I need you guys. Let's start a band. And they did. They got Billy Dagley on bass. And yeah, that was the beginning of Britny Fox, and the evolution of the band progressed pretty quickly. They started playing around Philly really fast and got a big following going quite quickly and got a lot of interest from some labels. So one night they did a showcase for, I believe, something, an offshoot of RCA Records. And after that showcase, Tony Destra drove home and got in a car crash and ended up passing away. And the future of the band was like almost shattered in one day. But they wished to continue, so they got a friend, Adam Ferrioli, to come in and play drums, and they got back on track and continued a little bit more, wrote more songs, played more gigs. By this time, Cinderella was already out with a record out, and they were coming back through the area. And I think Tom Kiefer hooked up with Michael again and said, we're playing this show locally. Would be cool if you guys would open for us. And that's what happened. And that night when they played in Wildwood, New Jersey, an A&R man from Columbia Records, CBS, came down to see the band through our manager at the time, and he was wanted to sign the band, so the band was going to be signed to Columbia, and then they wanted to replace Adam, because I guess he was a temporary fill-in, even though he was a really good friend of the band's and stuff. They were talking about bringing somebody in, and Michael, obviously Dean knew who I was, and Billy did. I grew up with him, and Michael liked the way that I played. So the three of them were kind of like, that's the dude, let's see if he'll do it. And at that time, Wasted was like kind of heading very down. They fired Paul Chapman. And I thought, what is the future of this band? If they fire one of the main guys, one of the most famous guitar players in rock, what are we doing? So I thought, you know what? I'm going to start over with a new band. And I flew back home to Philadelphia and I joined up with the guys in Britny Fox. And then shortly after we made the first album, and yeah, we had a lot of success. Like you said, maybe a little bit more glam on the first one. The second one, we wanted to go heavier. Um, but Dean wanted to go more commercial, so he started writing a lot of ballads and a lot of yeah, songs about the road. And he didn't want to scream anymore. He wanted to sing in his normal voice. So we started to have a little bit of a discussion about that and a little bit of a disagreement. We wanted to continue with the first album sound, with just better production. And yeah, making a very long story short, we ended up Dean leaving the band after the second album. So obviously we had to progress into a different format with a new singer. So we ended up with Tommy, and we did that third record, Bite Down Hard, which we're all real proud of because, Dean always used to say that, everything was him. He did this, he did that, he wrote all the songs, he sang it, he's the front man. But when he was gone, we kind of proved to ourselves mostly that we could do it without him, and I think that record speaks on that.
Hmm? Okay. So we arrive at the end of this first session. I
Yep,
suggest that you make a little cut and I send you a new link in 5 minutes.
sounds
Okay.
good. All right. See you then.
See you.